So welcome everyone. So welcome to the first event of our Career Paths in Science series. This series was created to celebrate our career in science can lead to such a diverse and exciting journey. And I'm Tania Medeiros, a postdoctoral fellow at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, and I'm your host representing the NCS team for today's event. We'll start by our co-founder, Anna Cadet, giving a short presentation on the mission and the team NCS.
It's this one. Okay, we are having a lot of people joining us. So hello, everyone. It's such a great pleasure to have you today for our first webinar in Career Path in Science. If you haven't done so, join our newsletter so you get up to date with the news that we are for the next events at the NCS and to get to know what we are doing, and also follow us at the NC Scientist on social media. My name is Ana Cadete. I'm a PhD, I'm a scientist, I work and live in Boston, and I'm the founder and president of the Non-Conformist Scientists. So welcome to our platform. I'm so happy that you are joining us for this particular event. So who are we? We are a non-profit organization based in Boston in the US with a local chapter in Portugal. Our team is composed of Portuguese women working around the globe, united by a vision. We want to empower scientists, no matter where you live, to perform at their best in their career. This is our main goal. We are scientists and we work for scientists. The NCS has three main projects that we are working on. We have the She Has a PhD podcast. So if you're not familiar with this, just tune in on Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, or on YouTube. Type She Has a PhD and start listening to the amazing stories of women scientists in leadership positions. We want to motivate you and inspire you, in particular for the female scientists that are here with us, to proceed with a career in science, and don't be afraid to one day be at the top in a leadership position. So get motivated and listen to She Has a PhD. Our second pillar of the NCS is the webinar. So we are organizing events. They could be online or presential, and they are for global education. So we want to share with you the knowledge that we have by working on the best universities and companies around the world, and start sharing with you our insights in healthcare innovation, in career tools for scientists. So we are organizing a few events that we will share with you, so everyone around the globe can get educated or more information on how to foster their careers as scientists. And our last part is the Career Hub. So we are partnering with companies, universities, and people that are specialized in specific pieces of a career development. So we want to advance the career of scientists. So stay tuned, because when we launch the NCS, all of these three projects are going to be grouped, and you are going to get access to all of them. For today, we have the first webinar of Career Path in Science, where we are going to share with you what can you do with a PhD if you decide to go for medical writing, medical science liaison, or consultancy. And we have a panel of amazing speakers that Tanya are going to introduce in a second, that you can learn from and get to see if this is something that you would like to proceed as a scientist. And before I leave, just want you to meet the team. So we are a team of Portuguese women working in different parts of the world. So I just want to acknowledge the impressive team that is behind the events. Without them, this would not be possible to have. So we have Joana, Tanya, Mariana, Rita, Lenia, and Rita as well. So if you want to collaborate with us, if you have any questions, just write an email to events@ncscientist.com. And just that's it. Just join the newsletter if you wanted to learn more. And I'm going to give the floor to Tanya to start this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. So yes, so as Anna was mentioned, we believe that the PhD is just the beginning of your career path, and we are here to show our 3 different new roles today. So welcome. It's a great pleasure to welcome 3 amazing and inspired women in their current fields. So welcome, Joanna, Raquel, and Ana Rita. Thank you so much for taking the time for being here today. So we chose these 3 very different careers that a PhD can take on. So which one of you will give a short presentation, what was your scientific career, how you got into the current position that you have, and this then will be followed in the end by a roundtable discussion. We encourage questions from the audience, so please write them in the chat if you may have. And let's start with our first speaker, which is Joana Fernandes. Joana is a principal medical writer scientist at J&J Innovative Medicine. So thank you so much, Joana, again, and the screen is yours.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Thanks to the whole team for putting together this whole event and for inviting me. And I'm really thrilled to be representing medical writing here today, because this is not only a job or a career, it's also a passion of mine. And one of the things that I try to impress on younger students is a job and a career should be something that aligns with your personality and your passions. And that's very important. It's not just something to give you a salary. So let's start. Like Tanya just said, I'm a principal medical writing scientist at J&J. I started early January, so I'm really new in the company. In retrospective analysis, I blame my grandmother for this. In the first years of my life, I was essentially raised by her, and she was not a pharmacist, let alone a PhD. She actually couldn't read because she was from a time when girls wouldn't go to school. You've heard about this before, of course. So she was one of these people. She had several kids to look after, and then me later. And she didn't, like I was saying, she couldn't read, but every time she needed to take some medicine, she gave me the leaflet that comes with a product, pills or something, and she would ask me to read the adverse events or adverse effects section to see if it could hurt her or harm her in any way. So I was like learning to read, but at my grandma's house, I was reading product leaflets for paracetamol and other stuff. So I trace it back to her, where I am right now. And what I wanted to be as a child, I definitely, I don't know if you can see, but what I'm holding in my hands in this photo is a tiny notebook. And for as long as I remember, I've always wanted to be a writer, essentially a fiction writer, because I love books. I absolutely love books and reading. And I used to write my own stories, I still do, and diaries. And so everybody thought that I was going to go on and study, literature or languages. I love English, I love Portuguese. And so I suppose the people that thought this was going to happen they had a point. But I've always wanted to be I've always wanted to be a writer. But I've always liked to understand the reasons behind things. So for me, it was not a surprise, although I guess I shocked many people in my family and other communities of mine when I decided to go for a degree in biology. And although I'm a planner, I have this personality trait that makes me a huge planner. I like to be in control of everything that I do. And, it's an illusion, of course, but it's something that I like to feel that I'm in control of my life. When I enrolled in the biology degree, I didn't really know what was going to come out of it at all. And the same happened. I just discovered step by step what I liked. And so while I was studying biology here in Coimbra, I realized that I really liked molecular neuroscience and cellular and molecular biology. And then I decided that for my PhD and my postdoc, I would pursue studies in this area, and specifically in neuroscience. That was really thrilling, and I learned a lot from people that are really in touch with what's new in this area of neuroscience. So I call this first slide the mountain challenge, because in the next slides I will give you an overview of how the journey was like climbing, and how the next mountain is supposed to be higher than the one you already climbed, and that's how you feel that you're conquering something and you're developing yourself on the way. So that's my academic background. But it was, like I said, I enrolled in biology. I figured out that I liked cellular and molecular biology, and then it was during my PhD, and also kind of solidified it in during my postdoc years, that I didn't really like research. It was not for me at all. But what I liked, my favorite moments during my PhD and postdoc were the moments when I was, reunited with my PIs and discussing ideas and leveraging ideas from publications, making scientific decisions. Let's go this way. Let's leave this way out. I was very lucky, because my PhD supervisor was very open to discussions, and so I learned a great deal from her in terms of critical thinking. I also really enjoyed presenting the results, or either if they were not mine, so manuscript results or my own results, were presentations. Communicating was definitely what I liked the most during my PhD and postdoc. And then, again, reading, the writing component, it was always there. It was still there from my childhood, this passion for the written word. And so I suppose it was at this time that I realized that I really liked combining scientific reasoning and critical thinking with writing, and that's when I found out about medical writing. Up to this point, I had no idea that this existed. So let's make a little stop here in the mountain challenge slides, just to tell you a little bit about where medical writers fit in the grand scheme of things. So this is a simple schematic figure that shows pharmaceutical development process. We have drug discovery, preclinical research, and then if the drug has promising results, it enters clinical trials to be tested in humans. And I don't want to go in depth into this. You can find out more if this is new to you, but we have several different phases according to the type of study and the type of and the size and the objective of the studies. But once that clinical trial phase, which can take years, is over, ideally we submit everything we have for drug approval, and if everything goes according to plan, we can have a new drug available on the market to treat patients. And so medical writers accompany this whole process from the clinical trial stage. So this is a medical writer. I defined it here as someone who prepares scientific documents to assist pharmaceutical development. So everything related to science and the progress of development is done, when it comes to the written word, is done by a medical writer. And just to give you a brief overview of what I like to call the medical writing siblings, we have medical communications, or also known as medcoms, and regulatory writing. And in the first one is more the kind of thing that PhD students with a knack for writing will think they will like most, because it's the sort of thing that we're very used to while we're PhD students. And that includes articles, reviews, abstracts and posters, conference reports sometimes, and brochures, educational tools, sometimes website content as well. So this is usually what attracts PhD students who decide to go for a medical writing career. On the other side, we have this is more to publicize a drug or a study in the pharmaceutical development. Regulatory writing is more to comply with the regulations and have. There are several. This is not at all an exhaustive list of regulatory documents that we need to prepare, study protocols to tell the investigators how to follow a specific clinical trial. The CTD is a dossier that compiles everything we have collected so far, in humans or not, about a specific drug. We can ask the health authorities like the EMA or the FDA for advice with briefing books. And when we submit the CTD with everything we have about a drug, they can come back with questions and requests for clarifications. So we are very much in touch with the health authorities in regulatory writing. This is definitely my favorite side of my favorite medical writing sibling. Other medical writers can also work in other things like translations, proofreading, quality control, medical education, that sort of thing. This was just to give you a context. But to go back to the mountains, so long story short, because this wasn't as simple as it might appear, I got my first medical writing job. And just to give you an idea, I don't know if any of the people present here are Harry Potter fans. I suppose there must be at least one. There's a moment, I'm always using this to impress on people how much medical writing was. The first time I read the medical writing job description, the impression it had on me. In the first Harry Potter movie, there's a moment when Harry enters the Ollivander's shop for wands, and when he gets his wands, there's a whole moment with wind, and he feels, I've found my wand. And I felt the very same thing, minus the wind part. When I read the medical writing job description, I thought, this is definitely for me. So I was so convinced that, again, a planner like me, I was so convinced that I was going to be good at it, that I moved to Brighton with my boyfriend and 2 cats. We sold the cars, we left the house. Again, not very expected from a planner like me, but I was really sure that this had to be my thing. And I was at Synopsys. This is an extinct company. It was sold last year to a bigger company. But I was there for 6 years. I made my whole, up to this point, of course, my whole career from junior to principal there. So I was in the office in Brighton, which is a city very close to London. I got that was my first experience with regulatory documents. Our clients were pharmaceutical companies looking for medical writing assistance. And from the senior level to principal, I was working from Portugal. So I came back to my country. And then just at the end of last year, I decided that I was a little tired of being a jack of all trades, because when you're working for a company like Synopsys, which is specialized in medical writing services, you work on whatever documents are outsourced to you and whatever clients. I lacked that sense of legacy and ownership. So when I saw this opportunity at J&J as a principal medical writer, I took it, and because I thought I'm going to get more experience with more strategic regulatory documents, such as the ones that I presented a couple of slides before, more interaction with cross-functional teams, which was something that I experienced at Synopsys, and those were definitely my favorite projects, and more ownership of the documents in terms of oncology products. And so a day in the life of a principal medical writer is to bring back a little bit of that part of the figure where I said that medical writers intervene. a lot of my day is meeting with the cross-functional teams, which include, again, this is not an exhaustive list. We have scientists who are developing a compound. We have the clinical and safety teams, the statisticians, the regulatory affairs people who advise on what we need to have in our documents to comply with the rules in Europe or in the US or elsewhere in the world. And then we have the actual writing and editing. So with the cross-functional teams, we identify what is needed. If we need a new protocol for a new study, if we need to amend a current protocol because something has come up and we need to make corrections, or if a study is coming to an end and we need to prepare the report with all the results to show to the health authorities, so that there's a lot of liaising and then the actual writing. And again, I give you here some examples of what I've been working on lately. The thing is, compared to my previous job, the pace is definitely faster. The timelines are shorter. Everything needs to be done for, in just a few days. But there's a lot more interaction and legacy. Now I know that I'm working on an oncology product, and I will become familiar with that program from start to finish. And whereas before I would work on with a specific pharmaceutical company for a couple of months, and then they were gone, I would never see them again. So that's what kind of motivated me to move this idea of being part of a team that is in constant interaction to get something done. And just to finalize, sometimes people say, but isn't medical writing a little bit just like writing down what other people are telling you to write? No, absolutely not. We need to, as medical writers, we definitely need to leverage the scientific mind that in principle we will have constructed during our PhD and postdoc years. We need to be able to understand complex concepts in science, in any field, and leverage our thoughts and trains of thoughts into clear and logical writing, and analyze large volumes of information and summarize it in a simple and clear way. Because the last thing you want is for the EMA or the FDA to say, yeah, it all looks very nice, but this is very confusing. And if a drug is working really well, wouldn't it be terrible that you have a writer that brings it all down by writing everything in a confusing way? So that's how important medical writers are in the team. We need to make sure that all the years of work will not fail now because you're being completely confusing when you're reporting anything. And obviously we need to recognize when data are being biased, because we want to be honest and transparent. But just in case this whole set of slides have given you the idea that everything was from one mountain to the other and another, and everything was easy, I got this image from the Harvard Business Review magazines, which I love. And of course, we won't have time or the ability to read all of this, but I just want to give you the idea that it's normal to go up and down in your career. I'm definitely somewhere around here right now because I've only been at a huge company for 4 months, so I'm definitely somewhere half lost, half still trying to figure out where I am. But that's part of the fun, the growth that comes with it. And that's it. Thank you very much. You can find me at this email in case you want to follow up on anything with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so we definitely transmit the feeling by reading that scene. So thank you so much for sharing this. I'm pretty sure there is tons of message. We will talk later in that roundtable discussion.
Okay.
So let's move on and introduce our second speaker, which is Raquel Figueiredo, which is a medical scientific liaison at Pharming. Welcome, and you can start sharing your screen. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Let's see if this works. 1 second. Okay, seems like it's working. So thank you very much. My name is Raquel Figueiredo. I would like to thank NSC for this invitation to come here today to explain a little bit what does a medical science liaison do. I am currently a senior medical science liaison at Pharming, But before this, I was many other things, and that's why I want to start to explain to you what have I done to come to this point of being a medical science liaison. So everything starts in Portugal. I'm also Portuguese, and in 2015, I graduated as a PharmD, so as a pharmacist at the University of Porto. When you graduate as a pharmacist, so without a PhD, there are many different routes you can take on your career. And back in the day, I thought that choosing to go for pharmaceutical industry was something that was very shining and that caught a lot of my attention, even though if I had no idea back then, what does it mean to be in the pharmaceutical industry? So I took the shot and I knew I wanted to go to pharmaceutical industry. So in 2015, I joined Angelini Pharmaceutical, which is a pharmaceutical company that has a local affiliate in Lisbon. So I moved to Lisbon and I started to work in the trade marketing department as a trainee for the consumer healthcare department. But again, and not like Joanna, who found her wand when she joined medical writing. In the pharmaceutical marketing, I wasn't really feeling that this was going to be where I wanted to be. And as any early 20 years old, I was a bit lost on what I was going to do. So I actually stumbled upon a new master degree in biomedical engineering that was provided by ISEL, so the Institute of Engineering of Lisbon. And this master was actually very interesting because the classes were at night and on the weekends, so I could still work my full-time job at Angelini while doing this master in something that always got up my attention, and it was a degree I always had in mind of doing instead of doing pharmaceutical sciences. So I thought, why not? And I'm very happy I did this because it was because of this master that in 2018, I moved to the Netherlands. So in the Netherlands, I did my master thesis at the University of Twente. This was a master thesis project in organs on chips, which are preclinical models for drug development. And when I finished it, so it was a 6 months project, I was again a bit lost on what do I want to do. So do I want to still be in the Netherlands? Do I want to go to Portugal? Do I want to move to another country or even do a PhD? But I decided to stay in the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands, I got a job as Global Innovation Project Manager at Fagron. So Fagron is a Dutch company which is focused in pharmaceutical compounding, and this was actually my first job in an international level. So I was working at the headquarters with colleagues from all different countries and local affiliates. I have grown a lot, I have learned a lot, but again, this wasn't my want, as Joanna would say. So I started to realize that what I wanted was actually to work with more innovative products, to work with something that had a real and big impact in the patients' lives. So I was very lucky because in 2020, I joined Pharming. Pharming is also a Dutch company. In this case, is what we call a biopharmaceutical company. And again, I joined Pharming, but as again, product manager, so in the marketing department. The only difference with Angelini was that at Pharming, I was working with a product for a rare disease, which is called hereditary angioedema. And then something happened. So in 2021, I got actually invited within the company to move from the department of marketing to medical affairs. And everyone that is in the industry is aware that this is something quite difficult to do. And when you got this opportunity, especially when you have a scientific background, you need to accept it without hesitating. And I felt like I was a step closer to achieve what I wanted, was to actually be able to have a bigger impact in the patients' lives. So I became medical and scientific affairs manager for this HAE product in Europe and rest of the world. I kept working for Pharming, and in 2023, so earlier last year, I actually moved to Spain, and here I am currently working dedicated to Spain as a medical science liaison. Medical science liaison is also referred to as MSL, which is basically the acronym. And when you are an MSL, the biggest question you are going to have from all your family and from all your friends and everyone you meet is going to be, what is an MSL. So I will try to explain here a little bit today what is an MSL, which is this role that we see as an option for everyone that has a PhD. So an MSL, in order to be an MSL, you need to have an advanced scientific training. So you need to have either a PhD, to be a medical doctor, or to be a PharmD, which in my case, I am a PharmD. But I can tell you that 80% of all my colleagues that are MSLs actually have PhDs. So these are people that did their degrees in biology, biochemistry, even pharmaceutical scientists or biotechnology, etc., and then evolve their academic background to have as well a PhD, which at the moment is not my case. Then, as an MSL, you work for a healthcare company. This can be a pharmaceutical company, a biotechnology company, medical devices, or diagnostics company. And you are going to be a specialist on a certain therapeutic field. In my case, this therapeutic field is the rare diseases, but this can range from oncology to cardiology, neurology, etc. Okay, so we have seen what is an MSL in general, but that's really nice, Raquel. But what do you exactly do on your job? And I can tell you that the primary goal of an MSL is to scientifically engage and collaborate with key stakeholders relevant to their therapeutic field. What does this mean? This means that when you are hired as an MSL for a company, you are going to be the scientific expert between the pharmaceutical company or the company you work for and the medical and scientific community. So you are going to be the person everyone refers to as a therapeutical expert that is going to be an expert on a certain product that this company is either launching or has already launched. And therefore, you need to interact with these key stakeholders that can be anyone from prescribers and healthcare providers to researchers, scientific societies, and patients' organizations. Okay. So also the MSL role is based, in my opinion, in 4 big pillars: scientific exchange, medical strategy, medical education, and evidence generation. I'm going to try to explain a little bit of what an MSL does in each one of these pillars, but please keep in mind that this is just a short overview. If I had to talk about everything we do, I would be here for more than 1 hour. And also please have in consideration that this is going to depend a lot on the company you work for, in the country you work for, and other factors. But in general, regarding scientific exchange, an MSL is responsible to provide updated medical and scientific information on the products, therapeutic approaches, and clinical trials that his company or her company is working on. So as a therapeutical expert, you need to provide the most precise and unbiased medical and scientific information to all your key stakeholders. You organize as well and moderate what we call medical advisory boards. So an advisory board is a meeting where you have a selected panel of medical experts that your company wants to receive medical advice on a certain topic. So could be the product, could be the diagnostics, could be the patient journey. And these medical experts are going to provide you with this input that you as an MSL need to organize and sometimes moderate these meetings. And attending scientific conferences is something we do as well all the time. Regarding medical strategy, very important and very aligned with our goal is to identify and build relationships with KOLs. So KOL stands for Key Opinion Leader, which is going to be these medical experts, so these doctors that are highly have a high impact and are very specialized on a certain therapeutic field, that are highly known in their communities of their expertise. And these are going to be the ones that MSLs usually interact the most, but as well scientific societies and patient organizations. And as well, a big important role of the MSL is to have these interactions with the KOLs to gather insights, because when you have these discussions with therapeutical experts that have been doing this for 20, 30 years, they're going to give you a lot of insights about what they think about your drug, how they diagnose their patients, how they treat their patients. And you as an MSL need to collect this information and to provide it internally to your company so it can help to design the strategy for future clinical trials and scientific research. Medical education. So if you are a therapeutical expert, you are going to be the person that is going to be teaching a lot of people, contributing to internal and external training programs. So MSLs usually within the company are going to be responsible to train the colleagues from marketing department and commercial department and so on. You are going to be responsible as well to conduct scientific presentations at scientific conferences in the behalf of your company and to review and approve medical and promotional materials developed by your company regarding the product or the therapeutic disease you work on. Last but not least, very big and important pillar is going to be evidence generation. As a medical science liaison, we need to support science, we need to support evidence generation, real-world data, and we do this by working together with our experts in the development of scientific publications. So we support them on scientific publications they want to do, and also internally on scientific publications the company wants to do. The MSL has a big and important role in this. And also when you have these interactions with the experts, with the researchers and the doctors, sometimes they want to propose research they want to do on the drug you work on or on the therapeutic area you work on. So you as an MSL need to receive all these proposals, evaluate them, and then if they are approved internally, to help the researchers and the physicians to move forward with this study and the research projects. So this is a little bit of a summary of what an MSL does, but what does a day in the life of an MSL looks like? And I can tell you it looks very different from day to day, which is something that is also very good if you are a person who is not really keen into having the same day all the time. It implies a lot of traveling, because if your main goal is to interact with stakeholders, you need to go find them, you need to go talk to them. And for this, you need to travel. An MSL usually has allocated either a region within the country, or sometimes, depending on the field, the entire country as an MSL. So this is going to imply that MSLs will be traveling approximately 60 to 70% of their working time. And of course, one big part of the day is to meet with these QLs, with these experts and stakeholders, most of the time meeting face-to-face, so in person, but this can also be virtual meetings. And we cannot forget, of course, because we have so many things to do, to organize advisory boards, to review publications, to do presentations, prepare trainings. There is a lot of desktop work, so planning and working on different projects. And I'm not gonna lie, some days just look like this, where you need to study a new publication that your company wants you to focus on, or a new therapeutical guideline that was just approved and launched on your therapeutical area. So some days you just need to focus and study. But as you can see, a day in the life of an MSL can be a lot of things. So with this, I would like to thank you for your time, and I'm going to be, of course, open to all the questions when the time comes to ask them. I leave you here with my contact details in case you want to contact me or add me on LinkedIn, and I'm really looking forward to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Raquel. This was very inspiring, because like many other, I didn't know what an MSL do.
Exactly. I hope it helped clarify a little bit now.
You transmitted really well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So our last speaker for today is Ana Rita Costa, a consultant at Catania in Germany. Welcome, Ana Rita. It's a pleasure to have you here. You can start your presentation if you want.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Good night, everyone. So today I would like to talk to you about consulting. Before going there, and just to give you a brief presentation about myself, guess what? I'm also from Portugal. So I started my studies in Portugal in genetics and biotechnology in UTAD, and then I did my master's in Lisbon, and then my PhD in Berlin, where I still live. What you can also see here, and I think it's important, that during my academic career, I did all of the Erasmus placement, Erasmus studies, Leonardo da Vinci, Socrates. So every time there was a scholarship, I was there applying for it. And I was very happy that I was able to study in Warsaw, in London, and in Berlin, where I did my master thesis that later on actually translated into an invite to do a PhD at the Max Planck Institute for Infection Biology, which I did from 2014 to 2018, so actually in 3 years. And then I moved into consulting in 2018. What I honestly like to say is that although this is what you see in my CV and how the academic path looks, what also happened that was at the same time going on in my life, and what I think it really shaped my curriculum and as well myself as a professional, is all of the other things with what I was and with whom I was working. So since my bachelor and working with the student organizations as well as an Erasmus student, both in the countries where I was studying and back in Portugal, I was involved with that, being a scout. Since I was in my PhD and when I moved to Germany, I was involved in so many different organizations that really helped me to see as well what are the things that I really enjoyed doing, because I was doing several things in other points. Actually, a lot of these organizations are highly connected with science, so I could see other points there. And also it helped me to understand that there is much more rather than what I'm doing in my PhD, and expand my network, which is super key, is to have a network and to invest in a network. And I could not make that more important. It's really key. Also, another thing, and there was even nice jokes at my lab about that, is that I was always taking a course somewhere. So I was very lucky to be in a graduate school that was part of the Max Planck Society, which had a lot of funding for different courses that I could go in different places, or I could even organize some courses myself. And I was always trying to do some courses, trying to go out of my comfort zone and see where were other things that maybe could be interesting for me. And again, inviting people and trying to understand and to connect with others, which I think this is how a full academic path should be, because having a PhD is not your goal and the last thing, is really part of your education. And that's how I took it. Then I moved into consulting. In all honesty, I moved into consulting even before defending my PhD thesis. I was in my last years of my PhD. It was very clear since my second year that it was very fun to do science. I had a lot of fun, but that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, which is, okay, I'm still a scientist. That's always how I introduce myself. I'm a scientist, but not in the wet lab. So mainly on my third year of the PhD, I was focusing a lot on the networking, and consulting came to me as my wand. I really loved that. I would use it too. I really thought a lot of the things in consulting were connected with what I wanted and with the things that I found were my strong points. But when I started to read about consulting, I found these definitions, and I didn't understand what consulting was, in all honesty. Like, our job is to help top executives to make the best decisions about their most critical business issues. Or like at my company, we say, we are a management consulting firm devoted to helping pharmaceutical and medical product companies create more innovative and effective strategies and organizations. Honestly, it doesn't say anything, and I couldn't understand how I could go there. So I reached out to a lot of people to order to understand it. Also, what you can see sometimes, and in all honesty, this is not far from reality, this image here on the top right, this is sometimes what people think and see about consulting. And honestly, what I actually do is a lot working on computers in business lounges and in traveling and at home. So it's not far from reality. But what actually is consulting? Consulting is really supporting a company to get to a goal that they want to accomplish. for example, this company X has the current status and they have an objective standpoint of the company where they are at the moment, and they have a question or a challenge on something they want to achieve. For example, they want to put the drug, which is a monoclonal antibody for multiple sclerosis, in the market, but they have faced some issues with some selectivity or with some patient populations or with some efficacy data. And it's very unclear how they can look into the future outlook. So where does the company want to be or what they can do? And there is this road here that is, they need a map and they need some support with. Of course, my first question when this was introduced to me, different words, but when it was introduced to me, it was like, okay, I would guess that's the job of the company to figure it out where they should go, right? So why would a company that is an expert in the X area would hire someone externally in order to answer such questions? There are several reasons for that. One of them, and I think the main important, is why consultants came here to help navigate these roads, is to have an external perspective, like to challenge internal assessments, to complement internal views of what is the best way forward, to bring benchmarks from other companies, to say what is the state of art in terms of these best practices in a specific field, to benchmark, to identify opportunities, to be objective, because in all honesty, like my salary and my career progression is not dependent on this company or on the specific product being accepted or not. Like I need to be objective with the information I have in mind, and I need to be analytical, and I will be. And sometimes that's a nice message to the client, and sometimes it's not to some, like, because I would disagree with them on how I see a certain product and the efficacy of that product, for example. Also, another thing is that consultants can bring in-house methodologies that we developed and the experience in certain aspects that the company may be lacking or may not have the right personnel at the time with the availability for that. And as well is the time, like if we are a project, is a consultant project, we come in, we have 3 months, in 3 months, whatever happens needs to happen, and we put all effort on that. And then this, of course, is an important thing in order for the company, if they are in a time pressure, do not have the resources for that. So this is generally what a consultancy is, and it can be many things to many fields. And I know this image is not the best one. I took it from mconsultingprep.com, but I think it's nice because it shows that there is a lot of management consulting topics, and if you Google it a bit, and you of course will be confused, because I wasn't. It's very common to be, and there is these different tiers, and I like how they put it here, in which you have the MBBs, which is McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, which are the 3 most prestigious consulting firms in the world, and they consult on every topic that you can imagine, from politics to environment to solar panels to science, to any topic that has a business, they have a team and they consult on that. Then you have the tier 2, which is the companies as well that consult in a lot of different topics. Nevertheless, they tend to have smaller projects, are less prestigious, but of course still very, very good companies. Then you have the big 4. A lot of people always refer to them in these ways, consulting lingo. And these are the consulting divisions of the big 4 accounting firms. So they are accounting firms, Deloitte, PwC, Ernst & Young, etc. But they also have consulting divisions, and these are called the big 4. And these here, so these first 3 groups are really the big consulting folks. You know, it's really all about that. But then you have the boutique consulting firms, which where Catenian is, which are specialized firms and localized. So focusing on a specific industry, on a specific type of business, on a specific necessity that they have. There is even consultancies for HR services. There are consultancies for different things. And Catenian here is one of the boutique ones. But what does that mean? What is actually being a boutique consulting firm for life sciences in biopharma? So at Catenian, we like to say that we are at this intersection between business, science and technology, and drug development. We are all scientists. We are a team of 40, which is for a consulting firm. Boutique one is normal, having this size. And we are all PhDs, we're all scientists, which would learn through the job and through a lot of different other trainings a lot about business and drug development, because it's much easier to educate scientists in business and drug development than educating someone with a business background into science. And most of the people here are scientists. I do not need to explain that because I can understand you all feel the same way. And we, as well as a boutique consulting firm, we focus on this here we call the value chain of R&D. As well, it was already presented to you today. So there is a discovery, research, and preclinical development. There is drug development and marketing and drug evolution. And we focus really in the early stages because we are all scientists and we focus really on the science part, not so much about market access, not so much about regulatory issues, but really about the targets, the compounds, the preclinical studies, and all of the clinical studies associations. Of course, there's also some part of life cycle management. Life cycle management is, for example, when one drug has been approved for multiple sclerosis, but then you also run some clinical trials to show that this drug is good for rheumatoid arthritis, for example, and this is life cycle management. Of course, because here you go back to the development stage there, we also have a lot of expertise there. And this is where we work into the biopharma world, is in between these points here. So we work a lot with startups, biotechs, and big pharma, because they are the ones that are going through this point. And here, I will not go to introduce this to you. You can go to our website. There's links and there's more information about it. But this is just really an overview of the type of services that we have at Catanian, and a lot of consulting firms into this field do. So corporate and R&D strategy is one of my favorites. Normally you work with the CSO, Chief Scientific Officer, CEO, and so on, where you look at the strategy of the company for the next 3 years, like how they can source their pipeline, how they can bring more innovation in, what type of inputs they will need, what type of structures into the teams they will need. Extremely fun. Then you have therapeutic area and disease strategy, disease mapping. This goes into go and understanding all of the disease that are there, that the client is interested in, what are the ones that have the highest unmet medical need, how are the clinical trials run, who are the biggest competitors, what type of data had the other drugs shown, is this data convincing? As scientists, as PhDs and postdocs, we have read a lot of papers, and we can smell when this data is not convincing at all and raises flags and so on. And this is what we do in a lot of times. Portfolio review and optimization is also really fun. We go into the company, we get all of the data from their assets, we review all of the experiments, all of the data that they have, preclinical, clinical, of the mouse data, all of the organ on a chip data and so on, clinical, and we make an assessment if we think this product has what it takes to go to the market, or if should be prioritized versus another. This is where normally people are not so happy we are there, because maybe we can give a recommendation that certain project is not as strong as others, and of course the team of this project will not be that happy, which of course is completely understandable, but at the end is not our decision. We just give recommendations. I will not go into all of this, but I will just give you an example. For example, for the asset and company screening, this is something we do very, very often, and what this entitles as a project. So, for example, in this question here, and this is again a project we do very often, the client, let's say it's a big pharma company, they say we have extra bucks here, but we do not have enough innovation in our pipeline in order. So pipeline is what they have that they are preparing to go to the market. And of course, it needs to be very full of ideas and full of drugs developed. And they need more drugs, assets, or they need to acquire companies in order to enrich their portfolio, for example, for oncology. So with this question in mind, and we have data scientists, bioinformaticians as well, we define with the client what is really the focus, oncology, which indications not to. Indications are diseases. I'm sorry, sometimes I talk into consulting lingo and I need to come back to it. We align in the databases that needs to be assessed, what type of market potential they want, what type of pathways are they looking into, create long list of companies or assets, and develop the scoring system to see which companies or assets would come up for us to review. Then we go in, we review the ones that were scored higher. We go through the asset data, preclinical, clinical, what is the company commercial positioning, how are the financials, who are the partners there. So everything that is online that we can have to see, we do it. But here we have 1 day per asset, and normally we do like 50 assets, like the 50 most interesting, we go and we do it. And then we prioritize together with the client. Maybe there were 5 that were super, super interesting. And here we spend the whole week, each consultant, going to every single detail about that disease, that pathway, that mechanism of action, that protein that is blocked by what and how. So it's really deep. I must say that during my first 6 months at Catanian, I read maybe the double the papers I read during my PhD, because you need always to be very up to date, and you read tons of papers per day at times. And then at the end, we have a clear recommendation to the client. What is the most interesting asset or company that they should acquire that best fits with their internal strategy and with the team's capabilities and so on. We also take that into consideration. And normally all of this takes 2 to 3 months. And we have a team of 3 to 4 people that work together and do this. So what does it involve to be a consultant? And I wanted to put here some topics, because it's of course very different and depends on the project, but it involves a lot of desk research, a lot of reading papers, a lot of starting Monday and not even knowing the name of the disease that someone asked you to become an expert on. And after 2 weeks, you can talk 3 hours about it. You have interviewed the 3 KOLs, key opinion leaders, top in the world on this topic, and they have answered all your questions. So it really involves reading a lot, being very curious, and doing desk research. It's a team sport. You're always working on a team at all times, which for me was the biggest differentiation from academia and very important. It involves being curious and very meticulous with data. Like, the clients are paying us to give an insight. We need to be sure that the data we are showing is the correct one 100%. Being a good communicator and presenter, this is a lot how we interact with our client. Being diplomatic communicator, there are always politics in place at the client side within the project, and we need to be very diplomatic. We are there to give a recommendation, that's all. Self-discipline and organization, there's a lot going on. Having a critical mindset, working a lot with PowerPoint and Excel, having a lot of meetings and internal alignments. Once I saw this consulting meme, I love to follow this page, just had a meeting to align on how we'll align with the client during our weekly alignment meeting. That's my life. It's funny because it's true. And it involves long working hours. It's not a 9-to-5 job, but in my honesty is much less stressful than the PhD. But of course, this is very personal and depends a lot on the company that one is. What is a typical day? So guess what? A lot of client meetings. Sometimes I have double projects, sometimes in China. And actually, in this case, this was a very specific day because I was in 2 projects. One was in San Francisco, the other was in China. So it was early morning and late evenings meetings. That wasn't so fun, but it was okay. It was a very specific day. A lot of communication and planning with the teams and as well with partners that are above me. Team meetings, so to see that the team is aligned and we can present and we are aligned in the message we want to give. Maybe I have a newbie working with me and he or she wants to train the presentation in order to give to the client. Doing desk work, as I said, reading a lot of papers, consulting databases, talking with KOLs, and a lot of communication because it's a teamwork. So it's very dynamic and it's very different every day. It's never the same thing every day, but it goes mostly with meetings and reading and preparing work. And then one of the things I thought about it, when I read about it, I talked with people, it's like, okay, but like I've never done consulting. I'm just a researcher. I'm a scientist, but I'm doing the lab work. So how can my skills translate into it? In all honesty, a lot of the skills that you need to be a consultant, you already have it as part of skill set if you are a researcher. So consulting involves a lot of problem solving and scientific mentality, mindset with a dynamic environment. You have this a lot as well into your PhD or your postdoc. You are normally focused in one area of expertise only, but you have to be a quick learner and you have to be a problem solver all the time, troubleshooting protocols, etc. Communication and people skills, as said, this is extremely important in consulting, being diplomatic communicator and so on. And you all have done that, I'm pretty sure, on with collaborators, with project team reviews, with presenting in conferences and so on. Management and organization skills, very important. Deadlines are tight, normally always, and they are a must. They are non-negotiable at all times. And that's as well what's happening in your life as researchers, I'm pretty sure. And you need to as well know how to prioritize in order to get to what you need at the end of the day. So there are a lot of things that overlap here. And I just wanted to mention that just because they are not called the same thing does not mean that they're not translatable. So on the translation to academia to consulting, first I would like to say, please first be clear to yourself why you want to leave academia, not science. Let's never use that, because this is science too. Science is much more than academia. Academia is one part where actually a smaller percentage of PhD students are able to stay, and why you want to pursue consulting or any other career. So really think about that and make it targeted. Like, don't start applying or starting seeing options just because you want something and whatever comes will be. That's normally not how things happen. As well, when you're doing your CV, be concise and adapt to the role. And in all honesty, you may do the best PCR in town if you are a biology PhD. It doesn't matter for consulting, for medical writing, or MSL. So really think about what my CV needs to say that talks to this role. Having papers is also great depending on the role you are applying. But for consulting, it can show a bit of your accomplishments, but it's like no one needs a half-page summary on that. And know your audience, focus on your soft skills that you have that talk to the role. Really, really read the role and invest a little bit on presentations. Like if you have a sloppy and not attention to detail in your CV, for example, consulting is clearly not for you. Letter of motivation. If you are not ready to explain why you are the real perfect fit for a specific role, don't expect that someone would guess it. And I think this is very important. Like, you need, of course, to be humble, to be realistic, but you need to be able to explain why you are the best position there, why that is your want. So really be clear about that. And in interviews, I think it's very important. Really, this really depends for consulting, prepare case studies, read about pharma, be ready to get analytical. Normally in consulting, there is a lot of rounds of interviews, but I think this is true for all the others. So be ready for that and prepare, because the people on the other side are also putting a lot of effort on it. To finalize, some general advice is, and I kept saying this, your PhD is part of your education, as was your master's, as was your bachelor, or any other thing. It's not a ticket to professorship land. Just because you have seen just people being professors that have PhDs, because that's what you have been exposed during your PhD and postdoc, does not mean that's the path for you. So open your mind to that. And this is key in my opinion. Also use the time of this education time that you are having during your PhD or postdoc to create a network and expand your skill sets. And we use this T analogy a lot. You already have the deep expertise, which is scientific, life sciences, PhD on a specific topic, oncology or whatever. But be a T, don't be an I, be a T. Like, go broader on other things, have ability to work outside of the other areas, go to events, discussions online, outreach activities. Don't you find you cannot find something you are excited about? Create it yourself. Look what Anna did with the Non-Conformist scientists. Like, really do something that you can use this time to the best. It's your education. You're not doing anyone a favor by doing a PhD. Be targeted, understand why you want to leave academia, not science, I already said, and what other paths make sense for you. Really think about it, network, ask people. If you are interested, then follow and learn more about the field. For example, if you're interested in pharma, in biotech, in consulting, here I highly recommend this, The Business of Biotechnology by RA Capital. It's a 32 online lessons. I think it's extremely well done. It's free, and it's, well, at least you will learn a lot, even if you say this is not for me. And it's a very interesting topic, and you have a lot of the other points there, some newsletters to follow, and reach out to people that have jobs that interest you. The worst can happen is that they don't answer, and what else, like, you can go on with that. And last but not least, sometimes personal interests can align with our work. This is, for me, it's women's health. I'm very passionate about it. I work with it, and I'm very happy that at my job I can also work with it. But if it doesn't align, it's also okay. This is just a job. It's not what defines you. So take it easy. You'll find something you like to do, I'm pretty sure. And that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I think you really show that how navigating a PhD is not easy, but this can help you translate several skills into your navigating your difficult decisions that you currently have in your job. So we have prepared several questions, some general questions, but we have so many questions from the chat. So I think we should give priority to those. Anya, do you want to choose some of the questions, or should I start?
Yeah, we can just start here by the ones that have the high number of likes. I'm just going to show here the question. I think everyone can see it. And this was more for, maybe a specific topic, but perhaps all of you have something to say about it. So thank you for the presentation. And we say the same. It was amazing, the presentations that all of you did. How can we improve our CV so that we have a better chance of being interviewed for an MSL or a consultancy or a medical writing position without having experience in the pharmaceutical industry? I always feel that it's difficult to get into these positions without being inside the company of having previous experience. So I think we can open this question, and if you can take a couple of minutes to answer, that would be great for the audience.
I can start perhaps because I see that it's quite focused on MSL and medical affairs, and I would like to focus here on a very important part. It is hard to enter the pharmaceutical industry, so I think this is something that we all need to have in our minds. Depending on the countries, it can be harder in one country than in others. So my advice for everyone that wants to try to enter the pharmaceutical industry or have a specific role is that the most difficult part is to enter. So we should try to enter. In this case, for example, for medical affairs, try to look if you have the possibility for trainee positions if you don't have any kind of experience. Or if you really want to go into MSL, I would suggest to look for vacancies on the therapeutical field related with your PhD. So if you did something on virology, maybe you could try to look for a vacancy on a company that has developing a drug on related with an antiviral or something related with that, or oncology if you did your PhD on oncology. But the most important to me is to really try to enter, because once you are inside, and if you get, for example, a more junior role on medical affairs department, could be, for example, a junior medical affairs manager, or even enter on different roles from medical affairs department like medical information. Sometimes it can be easier than go directly to an MSL, because MSLs, there are not so many, and it's quite complicated. So I would try to focus first into getting into the pharmaceutical industry in a medical affairs department, and try to evolve from there if you are in a country where it's complicated to go directly to an MSL. But I have to say that I also know people that have just entered directly through MSLs because, for example, as I said, their PhD work was very aligned with the therapeutical area. So it really depends. I don't know what others think about this. What?
Joanna, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I was saying that I think I agree with what you just said, but in this day, I think we need to admit that we are global citizens, and sometimes it might be worth considering doing some. Well, this is not new to our age, because we're the descendants of people who used to go to other countries and spend their lifetime there. Right now, I think we have the chance to go and also come back. So it might be that you might need to consider going out for a specific thing or to get experience, and then you come for a few years, and then you can come back if you want to. For instance, when I left, somebody was asking in the chat whether I had left for Brighton on because the job required so. Yes, this was pre-COVID, and they were not accepting juniors remotely. So I went to. So yeah, I traveled to Brighton on purpose. But I've always wanted to live in England, so that was aligned with my childhood dreams as well. But even if you're not really fond of the idea of going abroad, it doesn't mean that you'll stay there forever. And it might just be that you actually like it. I have a friend who always said, I will never, ever leave Portugal. And he's now married and has children in Italy, and he's not coming back, it looks like. So you just never know. And going abroad is something that I always defend, because at the very least you get to see other people in action, other cultures in action, and you learn. It's impossible not to learn something. So you don't have to go and stay there forever. So I would go for instead of just getting your foot in the door no matter what, just to be there, I would try to go for something that you're really passionate about, because like Anna was saying, you need to convince other people of why you're the best candidate. They're not going to do that job for you. So unless you know exactly why they should hire you and you're incredibly convincing, they won't give you the job. So and if you really like something, why wouldn't you do the sacrifice to go abroad, for instance, even if it's just for a few years? And people might say, oh, but we have families, or my boyfriend doesn't want to come, mine didn't want to come to Brighton, but that was a compromise we made together. I said, okay, if you don't want to come, I'll go alone. And in the end, he came with me, and it was a compromise. We stayed there for as long as needed and then came back. So it's, this is too much wording just to say that it depends on how much you're willing to do at your current stage in your life for the career you think will make you happy.
If I may add, I'll just like to say networking and reaching out. Like if you really want to apply to an MSL medical affairs job at J&J, you have LinkedIn. You can filter people by that, even people that have someone in common. You find 20, you send messages to 20, to answer, 10% success rate. You send your CV, you ask for some feedback, you say, I'm applying for this job. Do you have any advice? Worst thing can happen is that you will end up knowing the same thing you knew yesterday. Is that something so bad? So reach out. Don't expect that someone will knock at your door. You need to create your network and be creative with that.
Yeah. And just in case it's useful, I know other companies do this too, but I will speak about J&J, obviously. They have something called IDAR Academy. You can Google it and see. They hire PhDs, people that have no specialized field yet. And I don't know a lot of details about this, although I'm part of the organization now. But the idea is to hire people in certain fields and for a specific time. I think it's for a year, and then to give insight into several fields within the company. And so my plan is to try to bring medical writing into that game as well. It might be useful for people who have no idea about what they want to do. We're talking about passion and etc., but not everyone knows what they would like to do. And these companies that offer these programs might be a good start, because you'll get exposure to several things, and you might just find that one of them is actually something that you'd like to pursue.
Thank you so much for the question. So we can now go to the next one, Tanya.
Yeah, so we have here some general question for all the speakers. So how is your work-life balance now? And how does that compare to work-life balance during your PhD or other career stages? So I think we had a lot about this work-life balance now and before, if you can comment on that.
Maybe if I will start as a consultant, normally that has the tag, you have no life, you just work. Actually, that's one of the reasons why I didn't go for the Big Four or the MMB, because it's there you do have, you work 16 hours a day, and it's not 12 as I saw in the comments. It's really tough. It's really nice to grow in your career, but it's really tough. Boutique consulting firms have this thing that normally have a better work-life balance. Nevertheless, even though I work in general 10, 11 hours per day, I find this a much better work-life balance than my PhD, because I never have to work in the weekends, which I normally did during my PhD. When I finish my day, I finish my day. Okay, some email come here and there, but it's not this constant thought in the back of my mind that I could be doing more. I could be doing more because it's my PhD, because of this, because of that. Sometimes I finish a project and I even have a week in which I'm just breathing for growing on my personal interest. So even though I'm in consulting, I'm still saying I have a better work-life balance than I had in my PhD.
I would say that ever since I left academia, everything that I did afterwards had a better work-life balance. Even though I'm now working for a big pharma, it's still worth it in terms of work-life balance. And I'm a mom of a 4-year-old, so my day is really is really needs to be really organized, because at some point you have to go and get him from school and spend time with him. So I try to be as organized as possible, and it's possible. There's the odd moment out where you have to work on the weekend or on a bank holiday, but that is very rare, and only if timelines are really, really short and we're under pressure for some reason, but that's not common at all.
And from my side, I do not have a PhD, so I don't have this experience on how it is to have a PhD in academia. But I can say that from my experience and all the MSLs in general that I know, the work-life balance is very good. Also because MSLs, most of the times, we just control our own schedule. So when we meet these physicians, most of the time, we just gave them time slots where we are available. So we first gave them our availability, and then they let us know when from these time slots they would like to see us. So you can really control your schedule most of the times. But indeed, I think there is a lot of work as well on weekends because of conferences that you need to attend. And these scientific conferences sometimes are on the weekends, and you need to consider as well the travel. So depending if you are an MSL allocated to a small region or to a country, you are going to have different types of traveling. So if you're an MSL, for example, just for Lisbon, imagine you can go to sleep at home every night, but if you do the whole Portugal, that is a whole different story. So it's going to depend a lot, but most of the time I would really recommend it for someone looking for work-life balance.
Thank you. So we can move on to the next question, and I'm just going to tailor this one a little bit. So I think that here is about the need. So to have a PhD, right? So when what's the difference between having a PhD and a postdoc when applying for these specific positions or companies? And I think the question is that we already know that a PhD is a foundation, and we can use it to then decide what we want based on what we like. Then when we do a postdoc, I think this can bring up a little more discussion, which is, do you need a postdoc when you want to apply for a position outside academia? And I will leave this question for you and to know your thoughts on the need of having this postdoc for the type of job that you currently do.
I can start. For consulting, I find the postdoc a little bit tricky. We have colleagues that have a postdoc, like normally one. Nevertheless, is that what we and what consultancies normally look for into these PhDs is really the mindset, is really how they are focusing on a specific topic, how they take the data, how analytical they are. In all honesty, of course, it's interesting that you have done something on oncology, but no one cares about the protein you have worked on. It's like the probability of you having a project on that is close to none. So the postdoc, you still have these things, but normally when you are on your second or third, it starts to be your mindset is too academic, is too detail oriented, and not so much, big picture oriented. That's where consultancy is, and this is much easier to train when we have a fresh PhD graduate. I don't think having a postdoc is a minus in any way. I just think as well, it's very tricky for someone that's on their third postdoc or second postdoc then to think of a such big life change. And normally, although I have seen it, normally this is more challenging for both parties.
Yeah, I agree with Anna. I would add that in the pharmaceutical industry, between having a PhD and the postdoc, I don't think having a postdoc will be like a plus, let's say. I would say it's also not a minus, but I don't think it would be seen as such a differentiating point. So if you just have a PhD, which is already very, very good, you would be, of course, considered for an MSL. You don't need a postdoc for this. And if you have a postdoc, then it's a matter of course, you need to consider that the role and the scientific discussions are not going to be in this highly scientific level and such detail you are used to. But I don't think that is a minus, but it's for sure not a prerequisite.
Yeah, this was great. I think that it's really important, these questions, and I think that's also important how you want to sell it, as all of you mentioned in the presentation. Do we have more questions, Anna?
Yes, I think we can put here, well, we have a lot of questions, but at the end they are more or less related to the same. Yeah. So let me see here. We have another one here. So this is related to the qualifications that are necessary for this position. So I'm going to turn around this question a little bit and, going towards what Anna says about the need of your networking events. So what type of skills can you do before you apply for this type of jobs? So maybe we don't talk about a qualification, because again, a PhD, actually gives you the capacity to think, to be bold, to be perseverant. So there's many other skills that usually PhDs don't see in their value as a PhDs. But let's say that when you are applying for a job that you currently have, is there any type of specific or workshops or an internship that you did that actually help you land where you are today?
The short answer is no. And I actually feel really awry when I always feel very aghast when people say, oh, I paid for I enrolled some medical writing workshop wherever, and I was like, why would you do that? I think that in Portugal, because this is not a career in Portugal, except if you've been abroad and you're working remotely, this is not really something we have, which is also part of the reason why I went to the UK. But the thing is, I think that in Portugal, because there's really not medical writing, some people might want to sell these workshops as add-ons to your CV. And I'm not saying that they won't be useful, but they're not I'll be adamant and say that this is not a game changer. The real thing is when you get experience and your hands on something. So in general, and I think the other speakers will agree with me, in general, this is not specific to medical writing. I think the first thing you need to do, if you have no idea, no clue where to start, is just Google examples of transferable skills from a PhD, from a life sciences PhD. Google will give you, or ChatGPT will give you a list, and then you copy that list on a paper, and you think, and you make like a table, and you think, from my PhD or postdoc, what examples do I have to substantiate these transferable skills? And then you have another column in that table with the requirements or the qualifications, or whatever the job description of the job you're looking at is looking for in somebody. And so if they really want someone with project management skills or organization skills or writing skills or whatever it is, you have to move your experience above to the top of that table. So what I'm saying is, of course, most of my time as a PhD student was pipetting stuff and discussing stuff and reading papers and stuff like that. I didn't do a lot of writing, and I didn't do it every day. But this was the bit that was interesting to the people hiring me. They knew that I was fresh from academia, so they knew. I mean, actually, I wasn't really fresh from academia. I didn't have time to say that, but I spent a year my transition year was spent working remotely for an America-based company, doing a bit of medical journalism. So that was it wasn't medical writing, but it was my first formal paid writing job. And it was in a lot of different diseases. So it gave me knowledge about medical jargon in specific diseases. But you might spend some time. So the thing is, although I did have that year to back up my CV, when I left my lab, I had no idea how am I going to say, oh, I used to write grant proposals with my PI, or I wrote my manuscripts, I wrote my PhD thesis. That doesn't count. Everybody does that. And plus your PI is probably going to change everything. So there's no proof really that you wrote that. So it doesn't really serve as writing samples. What I'm saying is try to see what you can leverage from your own experience and how you can use that to convince somebody else that you don't have to have been in the industry before to be a good candidate, because nobody has been in the industry before. People are not born into pharmaceutical companies. They get there somehow. And the how is how you sell yourself and how you think that your experience can be conveyed in a way that explains why I'm a good candidate, although I didn't do any writing for, the 4 or 5 years of my PhD, or I didn't do it every day. And so I think that's, I don't know if I made myself clear, but the idea is that even though you haven't done it much, and this is true for MSL or for consulting or for medical writing or any other jobs, although you haven't done much in your PhD because you were a researcher, try to give more focus to the bits that overlap with what they want in the job advert, and see how convincing you can be with your experience. I hope that's clear, but that's definitely my...
Yeah, it was clear.
Position.
Yeah, if I may say, I will just say it's important to use your PhD time to do much more than what you do.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you will not differentiate yourself.
Exactly.
So really see where you can learn other things. My differentiator was that I organized tons of events. And so project management comes naturally to me after you organize. It's a proven thing. So see where you can have your differentiator. And I as well left here one course that I find it's free, it's online, because it's hard and you need to find something that differentiates you. And for example, I have a colleague that one of the reasons in which she was called for an interview is because she did an internship at Disney World, and one of our partners as well did one, and somehow this really talked to him because they had the connection there. So be yourself in your CV. If doing an internship at Disney World where you learn about client management, about managing expectations, talks to you, this should be in your CV. If being a basketball player talks to you, this should be, because these true selves is what differentiates your CV.
Yeah, absolutely. You are a unique person, so show that in your CV and your cover letter for sure. Raquel, do you want to add something?
Yes, so I absolutely agree. I think both Joanna and Anna said everything. I would just like to add that on these kind of workshops, but also specialized courses that sometimes are sold, I did see that sometimes some people do enter and land MSL jobs when they do these specializations, let's say, or it's not really a master or something, but it can be offered by a university. For example, I know that Catholic in Portugal used to offer a specialization on being an MSL, or CESIF. I don't have any association with them, and neither did I do a course. But I know that in Spain and Portugal, they do have a specialization on being an MSL. And at the end, they sometimes offer directly an internship at the company. And this can be also sometimes as an entrance door. I don't think we need to go through this door, but I know I just wanted to leave here that has been an option for other people, even though I don't think that's necessary, because of course all those skills were already entered. But these specializations sometimes give you this network and this internship that sometimes is so difficult to get.
Okay, maybe you have one time for one more question, so I would like to ask mine. So when you were transiting from the academia to your current job, how supportive was your PI? Do you think this is important? Because many times we have this preconception that if you are not going to follow the same transition as your PI, sometimes he's not supportive, or she. So if you could elaborate a bit on that.
I'll be a little adamant. If your PI is not supportive, then why are you with them? Why would you care? Because the PIs are researchers, and like Anna said several times, and I totally agree with that, we are still scientists. A researcher is someone that works at a bench in a lab. A scientist is I like to say it's a personality trait, is a skill set that we have. It's a mindset. And so why would you need the approval of your PI? And I know that Anna Cadet, for instance, you did your postdoc or something, or PhD in a mixed environment, right? It was half academia, half industry at the time, wasn't it? And your PI or something was very supportive of your full transition to the industry. So in case you're in that kind of PhD, perhaps that help is really rich, and they can put you in contact with people that might lead to the door that you will open. But in a regular, let's call it PhD, I don't see the point of caring about what your PI thinks. If you want to go, you go. Nobody needs to be a researcher for the rest of their lives, especially if they don't like it. So,
for me, my PI was a really old school German professor. He was supportive because he saw since the beginning that being in the scientific part as he was within the wet lab wasn't my thing, and I always made that very clear to him. I made it very clear to him, I'm here 3 years, I don't want any extension, and I'm out, because that's for me the education I need from these topics, which he always thought I would go back and ask for an extension because I would regret it. But for me, having that very clear made it easier to transition. Like for me, that was part of the education. And I think having this discussion helped. He always understood where I stood and what I wanted to take from the PhD. And if he or she supports you, gosh, that's great. But we know that's not the reality for all. So don't use that as your excuse to not look into that. He's just your boss. Like, I also have bosses now. Does that mean I will not apply for other jobs?
exactly.
Of course not. It's like, it's just your boss. It's not your God.
Yeah.
I did not have a PI, so I don't think I can comment here.
I think the discussion is great, and I can see what Tanya says, and I'm sure that a lot of the PhDs and the postdocs that are listening to this conversation rely on that. We not always have PIs that are supportive of our dreams. As Joanna says, like, I was very lucky just because I had the experience in a biotech before I did my PhD. So when I decided to do a PhD was actually to go back to industry, never to be an academic PI. And I decided on my on academic career. So I decided on my PI based on where I wanted to go next. And maybe, if I may add, is like some kind of advice is like, what do you want to do next? Start thinking about it now, so you can start building up the skills that you need to then be where you want to be in the future. Absolutely. And again, like, you have many opportunities. You may not find the right one first. How many people think they would love to be editors, and then they decided that that's not for them, and they go back and they search for something else. So I think it's good to try and to reach out to people and to start to getting to know what you can do in the future. I really like the slide that Anna showed. Yeah, this is just part of our road, is not the end. And so we just need to take advantage of it and use it to build up in our career and see where it's going to take us in the future. So I think we are good with questions. I'm going to wrap up. I just have here the last slides that I'm going to share before I thank all of you. Just a second, because I need to upload this one here.
Yeah, I think we could stay here for hours, but it's time. It's late.
Yeah, I just needed to do. Okay, I'm just going to add this one to the stage so people can start adding the QR code and join our newsletter. So Anna, Raquel, and Joanna, I thank you so much. As Tanya says, like we could stay here for another hour or two just to discuss the career paths that you took. Your presentations were wonderful, and I'm sure that all the students that attended today's webinar got a great insight on what to do in their future. And we have many more that registered today that I'm sure they were not able to do the time, but they are going to be able to see the webinar streaming. So coming up, we have a couple of more events. We have innovation in healthcare, so frontiers in aging and AI in drug discovery, and career path in science. I think this is also the one that everyone wants to learn, is about the academia versus industry. So if you want to join us in the future events, don't miss out, join our newsletter. And I think this is all for today. Thank you so much for our guests. I'm thrilled to have you here, and I wish you a wonderful week. Thank you so much for attending the webinars.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.